Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Steven Brown, and in today's video, I'm going to be testing out a little bit of a new thing here because I'm going to be talking about this topic on a couple of different fronts. I'm going to link in the description of this video time codes for when certain things are happening in this video. So if you'd like to just watch one specific section of this video, or you're more interested in one than the other, then you can just skip to that and you know exactly when it starts. First off, I just want to say if you're new here, thank you so much. We blew right past that 600 subscriber number that I kind of hinted at in the previous video and whatnot. So if you're new here, say hi in the comment section. I haven't been keeping up with it as much as I would have liked to, but I normally do reply to everyone in the comment section down below, or I try to get back to you. If it's not the same day or the next day or maybe even a week later when I have some time, I just like to sit down and respond to everyone in the comment section. So if you do have a question or whatnot, I will get back to you eventually. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But deciding to do the time codes and whatnot on this video just because I suspect that it's going to be a little bit longer of a video, so I want people to enjoy the sections that they want to enjoy. Let me know if you like that idea down in the comment section below, and maybe I'll make it a regular thing from now on. But in today's video, we will be discussing Alex Pietrangelo on multiple fronts. You guys absolutely killed it on the last video with a bunch of likes. You commented down below that you wanted this video, so I am going to make it. And I just want to start this off by saying that on one of the more recent episodes of the Steve Dangle podcast, Chris Johnson was on there. Chris Johnson, you know, one of the more respected hockey reporters in hockey right now, saying that he doesn't really know if there's much interest from Pietrangelo's camp in wanting to come back to Toronto. So let's just say that we're working through this video with the assumption that there is some kind of interest, right? Just to kind of talk about it, have some fun and whatnot, because there's no hockey going on right now, right? We got to have something to talk about. Okay, so I'm not going to go over his resume too much here because we know about Alex Pietrangelo already, but what I am going to jump into right away are some dollar amounts, okay? Because we need to be talking about how much money Alex Pietrangelo is going to be making, first off, before we can move forward here. And EvolvingHockey.com or Evolving Wild on Twitter, this is their contract prediction tool that they spend a lot of time with, and if you look at the number that Marco Scandella was predicted to get and then what he actually signed for, they're pretty on the ball most of the time. So basically $9.2 million under an $82.5 million salary cap, and $82.5 million would be a frozen salary cap. It's been kind of tossed around, saying that the salary cap could increase slightly and then freeze at that number for a couple of seasons, and $82.5 million was that number that's been being discussed. So that's what we're going to be using in this video moving forward. And even when we're using CapFriendly's contract comparable tool right now, $9 million for Alex Pietrangelo, there's no way that he makes anything less than Roman Josi. Maybe it's something in between Brent Burns and Roman Josi, maybe something in between John Carlson and Roman Josi, Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Roman Josi. Between $8.5 and $9 million is where he's going to fall. But the one important thing that I would like to point out here is the signing age. The signing age for this player, he's 30 years old already, okay? This is not the same as John Tavares when he was a free agent 2 years ago. Can't believe that that was already almost 2 years ago right now. John Tavares was 27, turning 28 when he signed this deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And when his 7-year contract expires with the Leafs, he's going to be 34 years old. At the end of an 8-year deal for Alex Pietrangelo, he's going to be 38 years old, okay? That's a big difference when we're talking about elite players making a lot of money. And if he were to sign with a different team, that would only be a 7-year deal, so he would be 37 years old. And for everyone suggesting in the back, yelling about, oh, but they could do a sign and trade and whatnot, no, it's not happening. Alex Pietrangelo on another team, 7-year deal, will be 37 years old. And that's something that the Leafs and other teams that maybe want to try to sign him are going to have to compete with St. Louis over, is that they're going to be able to offer him more money than every other team because they're able to offer him an additional year on that contract. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at here, and I guess this is section 2 of the video, taking an in-depth look at what's going on with the St. Louis Blues and their cap situation for this upcoming season. Now, I took the liberty of re-signing Vince Dunn here for 2 years, $2 million. It's a little bit slightly below some contract predictions for him, but, you know, it's going to be a buyer's market this offseason with the cap relatively staying the same. So, a little bit of a conservative prediction here, but you're going to see the cap space in the corner of the screen here, and this is with a 22-man roster right now, so they do have 2 guys on the bench right now, and no Alex Pietrangelo. Only $2 million in cap space here. Signing Marco Scandella to this contract was very confusing, and trading and signing Justin Falk to this contract at the beginning of the season was even more confusing, especially considering the year that he had in St. Louis. Oof. But then again, Justin Falk was playing behind guys like Pietrangelo and Colton Parayko on the power play and 5-on-5 and whatnot, so maybe he produces more in more favorable minutes. And I said this in the previous video when I was talking about the Maple Leafs possibly signing Alex Pietrangelo when I was working under an $84 million salary cap before the coronavirus and before the season stoppage, that the St. Louis Blues will do whatever it takes to retain their captain if they want him bad enough. And now that we have compliance buyouts in the conversation here, if they were rolled out the same way that they were previously prior to the 13-14 season, and teams were awarded one before the 13-14 season and one after the 13-14 season, that would mean that the St. Louis Blues can just erase one of these contracts here and not have it count towards their salary cap. And you're probably already screaming at me, well, Steven, they would just use the compliance buyout on Justin Falk. And I mean, yeah, that is one of their options here, but there's more to it than simply just using the compliance buyout on Justin Falk here, because if they were to do that, they'd be essentially lighting almost $30 million on fire. They'd have to pay him $30 million over the course of 14 seasons. And that would still only leave them with $8.4 million to go out and get Alex Pietrangelo with a 21-man roster currently. And the one thing you have to consider is that you'd be signing Pietrangelo to an 8-year deal, so you'd be paying him the money that you'd be paying him on an 8-year deal, plus the $30 million that you used to buy out Justin Falk. You have to add the money together because it was a subsequent move that you needed to make to acquire or reacquire Alex Pietrangelo. Can the St. Louis Blues afford that? I don't know. They're going to have to reach pretty deep into their pockets here. But another player that I've kind of identified as a guy that they can maybe look to free up a little bit more cap space is Oskar Sundqvist. If you look at how much he's paid and the type of season that he had with St. Louis this year, it's reasonable to assume that they might want to trade him. And if they just find a taker for him, they can free up another $2.75 million. But if they use their compliance buyout on Justin Falk and then just bought out Oskar Sundqvist normally, it would save them about another $1.4-ish million, which would leave them with $9.7 million in cap space to go out there and re-sign Alex Pietrangelo. Now, another option here, if they couldn't afford to just light $30 million on fire, is to use the compliance buyout on Alex Steen. And maybe they wouldn't even have to use the compliance buyout on him because he was still a useful player for the St. Louis Blues last season, but it's going to be really hard to find a taker for that contract to just absorb the entire cap hit for the 1 year that it does have left in a market where there's not really a lot of teams that could probably afford to do it. So let's say they use the compliance buyout on him. They'd have about the same amount of money to go out there and re-sign Alex Pietrangelo if they were to use the compliance buyout on Justin Falk, but it wouldn't cost them as much money in real dollars to do this, but it would leave them a little bit thin here on the left side. So that's why I think the more favorable option, if you weren't considering the money, is just to buy out Justin Falk. But if you're considering the money here, they might have to make a couple of compromises, and they might have to dump a guy like Alex Steen. Like I said, if they want to keep Alex Pietrangelo around, they will find a way to do it. They do have the resources, and they probably do have the money to keep their captain. Now, this is probably the reason why most of you clicked on the video here. Could the Maple Leafs afford to do it, and what would the team look like? Because, of course, they could afford to do it, right? They could just easily trade one of those big four players and free up the cap space to do so, but I'm going to be working under the assumption that that's a last resort thing. Let's try to see if they could do it without doing so and then weigh the pros and cons. So in my mind, it's already a foregone conclusion that Andreas Johnsson is not going to be on this team next year. However they decide to work that out, he's just not going to be on the team next year. But this is the best that I could absolutely do without trading one of the four core players here. I made compromises, I tried to make tougher decisions, I tried to be conservative with some projections here, but this is the absolute best that I could do. And I have to be honest with you guys, I absolutely hate the depth that we have here on this team. If we were to sustain anywhere near the amount of injuries that we did this past season with a roster like this, with the depth that we have in the AHL, and don't worry, I will explain the guys on LTIR in just a second here, we would be absolutely screwed. I don't trust that center depth. I don't trust Jason Spezza at 37 or 38 years old logging that many minutes on the third line there. I don't want to place that much of a burden on Nick Robertson. I don't really want to rely on guys like Ilya Mikheyev and Kasperi Kapanen being consistent contributors in the lineup, even though they probably should be at this point. I'm more talking about Kasperi Kapanen than anything here. I don't want to. I mean, I guess if you're paying $40 million to 4 forwards here, you're expecting them to carry the most of the load, and those players would be getting more minutes in this situation, probably closer to what Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid shoulder each and every night in Edmonton, and you'd probably see more production out of them, but I don't like the depth here. I do not like the depth here, and the challenge is trying not to trade one of those guys while also having depth around them. Now, if we were just to abandon the idea of bringing Alex Pietrangelo home here, the guys on LTIR right now are guys that the Maple Leafs could just inject into this roster, inject into this lineup, and they could afford them. Those are the players that you're sacrificing in order to bring Alex Pietrangelo home here and have absolutely no depth in the organization. And I think that I would rather have these players than just Alex Pietrangelo. Because if we take a look at this option right here, you're going to see 178K in cap space right now, and this is not the most flashy option, right? It's not the most creative option and whatnot, but it is the option that gives you the most depth while still making marginal upgrades. It allows you to bump Jason Spezza down and keep him in that fourth center position. It allows you to have Kyle Clifford here to let guys play a little bit bigger. It allows you to have Dylan DeMello here to be a D partner with Morgan Riley. It allows you to keep Travis Dermott and see another year of him under a team that's hopefully a little bit more stable, right? It's hard to do player development when shit's constantly hitting the fan and coaches aren't using the players in their proper roles. It allows you to bump down Timothy Liljegren here and not rely upon him to be a consistent NHL player every night. You still have Freddie the Goat there, and you have Pierre Engvall waiting in the wings in the minors to just be called up whenever you needed him to. You still have Nick Petan, you still have Kenny Augustino, Adam Brooks, who we could see next season, Jeremy Bracco, Dennis Malgin, Igor Korshkov, who all played games with the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. This lineup has so much more depth in there, and if we're gonna sustain anywhere close to the amount of injuries that we did this season, we are going to need each and every one of these players to step up and be at least replacement level guys. I don't know, you don't even have to love this option, right? If you're still not a fan of Kerfoot and you think that there's another centerman or another deal out there to be made to get a guy similar to his skill set or even better than him, go for it. Make that deal, right? He could just be a placeholder in this lineup saying that the Maple Leafs can afford a guy making that much money to play on their third line. And yes, Alex Pietrangelo is absolutely amazing, and none of those depth options compare to him anywhere close here, but 13.8 goals above replacements, probably closer to tops in the leagues in terms of defensemen. He was one of the league's best defensemen this past season here, but we're looking at the cumulative expected goals replacement for all of these other players there. It's 11.4, pretty comparable, and I don't know about you, but I don't feel the same way that you can't spend $40 million on 4 forwards. You can't put all of your eggs in one basket with Alex Pietrangelo and have no depth. At least in the scenario where the Toronto Maple Leafs are paying those 4 forwards $40 million, there is some type of depth here up front and on the blue line. The other way, there was just no depth anywhere in the organization. And I guess just to throw it on here at the end of the video here, yeah, you could easily trade one of those 4 guys, you know, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, and say, look, I fixed it. Now we can afford to sign Pietrangelo and keep all those other players there. And a lot of people might target Marner as that guy. A lot of people will target Tavares as that guy. But I'm not comfortable in trading Nylander for the same reasons that I'm not comfortable trading Marner. I'm not comfortable on giving up guys that haven't even hit their prime yet in exchange for a guy that is going to be 37 or 38 years old at the end of that contract and probably only elite for another 2 or 3 seasons. And I'm sorry, for me, the Maple Leafs moving John Tavares is even more galaxy-brainy than Alex Pietrangelo coming here in the first place after, you know, they spent so much time and so much effort naming him the captain and rolling that out and, you know, signing him. It was such a process and people were so happy at the time. I think we just need a little bit more time to sort this out. And I think that next season, the end of this season was going to give us the answers that we needed, but we're not going to get an end to this season more than likely. So we're going to have to wait for those answers next season, right? This lineup, this team right now that I'm showing you on the screen right now allows the Maple Leafs to go into the trade deadline next season with some options, right? Because you still have trade assets like Travis Dermott, like Timothy Liljegren here that you can include in a trade to further upgrade this defensive core. So to answer the question that I posed at the beginning of the video, can the Maple Leafs do it? Yeah, of course they can. They have the financial muscle and the financial might to do whatever they want, basically, and anything's possible, right? John Tavares came here. They won the draft lottery to draft Austin Matthews. The Chicago Cubs won the World Series. You know, anything is possible. But should they do it? Probably not. And I think that that's a question that everyone should be asking themselves. It's, can they do something? Yeah, of course they could do that thing. Should they? Maybe some things you probably shouldn't. So make sure to leave me a like on this video if you did like it and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And guys, remember the Maple Leafs do not have to acquire Alex Pietrangelo or a player like him to make this offseason a successful one. There are simpler options. There are options that leave the door open to bigger moves down the road, like I talked about in this video, that I think are more favorable. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you again in the next one.